Today, I'll be explaining this drama, Weightlifting Fairy Kim Bokju. The story begins with a group of girls working but having their path blocked. The girls keep asking politely, but their requests are ignored, and even the school teacher scolds them. One of the girls is named Kim Bokju. The reason she's being scolded is because she's a student in the weightlifting department at Hanul University. Mentioning the weightlifting club often gives people the impression of strong bodies, sweaty smells, and rough manners. So all the dirty and hard work is always left to them. Bokju is 21 years old this year. When she was 10, she visited a weightlifting gym with her father and instantly fell in love with the smell of iron, sparking her dream of pursuing weightlifting. She had just won a gold medal at a national competition. At that moment, a ball from the gymnastics team hit her on the head. Furious, Bokju threw the ball far away. The weightlifting club and gymnastics club had always been at odds with each other. Taking advantage of Bokju being off guard, she pushed her halfway to the ground. Others nearby just laughed at the scene. The little chubby Bokju actually had enough force to knock over a bunch of neatly arranged chairs when she fell. Only her two best friends, Sun-ok and Nan-hee, felt truly sorry for her. Trying to cheer her up, Nan-hee even gave her one of her beloved sausages. But before Bokju could even take a bite, she collided with a passing cyclist. Luckily, she was unharmed, but the sausage was ruined. She warned the boy on the bike to be more careful, but the boy thought Bokju looked strangely familiar. Even after he rode away, Nan-hee couldn't help but gaze at the boy's back in a daze. She introduced him to Bokju as Young Jun-hyung, the famously handsome swimmer on campus. Nan-hee believed that even a chance encounter like this was a blessing. But Bokju didn't think he was all that handsome. She just regretted not asking him to compensate for her sausage. As she was leaving, she noticed Young Jun-hyung had dropped a lace handkerchief. Lately, clothes belonging to female students had often been going missing around the school. So Bokju suspected Jun-hyung and dragged him to the school office. Bokju was certain the person she'd caught was the same one stealing the girls' clothes. Even though she was convinced Jun-hyung was a bad guy, the teachers, knowing Jun-hyung well, believed that despite his quirks, he couldn't possibly be that kind of person. They said one person's word wasn't enough evidence and sent both of them away to wait for further investigation. When Bokju mentioned the handkerchief, Jun-hyung finally realized the handkerchief he'd been searching for both at home and school was actually with her. He asked her to return it, but Bokju, completely unfazed, told him to first return the girl's stolen clothes before discussing the handkerchief. But Jun-hyung, who was falsely accused, had no way of finding clothes he never took. The next day, without any coins, Jun-hyung went to the wishing fountain. Unexpectedly, he ran into Bokju again. Caught red-handed doing something sneaky, Bokju became even more convinced he wasn't a good person. From that point on, whether it was on the sports field or under the dorm building, Jun-hyung kept showing up, persistently asking Bokju to return his handkerchief. After all, he couldn't use force against a girl. Bokju replied that she genuinely hoped to disappoint him. And sure enough, fate granted her wish. Later, when a few of them went to the storage room to get chairs, they discovered the real thief who had been stealing the girls' clothes. It was actually a middle-aged janitor. Watching the culprit being taken away, everyone felt relieved. Holding the recovered clothes in her hands, Bokju's first thought was realizing she had wrongly accused Jun-hyung. Just then, she spotted Jun-hyung nearby and instinctively hid, feeling guilty. To sincerely apologize, Bokju carefully washed and ironed his handkerchief. When Jun-hyung saw the handkerchief in her hand, he snatched it back and pressed it to his nose. Upon realizing it had been washed, he became even more upset and asked her why she'd done that. Bokju found his reaction baffling. She tried to snatch the handkerchief back to dirty it before returning it. Jun-hyung accidentally pushed her into the water. Seeing Kim Bokju struggling in the water, Young Jun-hyung at first didn't want to get involved. But when he realized she clearly couldn't swim, he couldn't bear to ignore it and jumped into the water to help her. Their eyes accidentally met, and at that moment, childhood memories flooded both their minds. Back in elementary school, they had been classmates. Jun-hyung had been so nervous during a sports meet that he ran the wrong way in a relay race. Later, when he was cleaning windows, some other boys startled him, and he accidentally fell from the upper floor. Luckily, Bokju happened to be downstairs and caught him. At that time, Bok Ju was just as chubby as she is now, and Jun Hyung was just as skinny as he is today. Now, seeing Bok Ju struggling to climb out of the water, Jun Hyung eventually swam back over and pushed her up onto the shore. Bok Ju apologized to him for wrongly accusing him over the handkerchief. Jun Hyung then called her by her childhood nickname. Ever since Jun Hyung recognized Bok Ju as the girl who had once saved him in elementary school, he began to pay extra attention to her. One day, when Bok Ju was supposed to treat her friends to fried chicken, he unexpectedly saw her still out delivering food, looking tired and sweaty. He teasingly suggested they taste the chicken first, and if it was good, they'd pay for the delivery. Bok Ju immediately responded that she'd treat them. After all, she had been at fault before. Jun Hyung didn't reveal his real intention. Instead, he joked around with her. Unexpectedly, Bok Ju didn't seem to understand the hidden kindness behind his words. Watching her leave, Jun Hyung lost his appetite and just wanted to catch up with her, though he couldn't manage to. Following the delivery address, he finally found the place Bok Ju had delivered to and overheard a conversation revealing the truth. The shop owner was actually her father. It turned out Bok Ju wasn't doing a part-time job at all. This was her family's business. From their conversation, Jun Hyung not only saw her as a hard-working and filial daughter but also noticed that she had paid for the delivery from her own pocket earlier. Curious about the shop, he invited his friends to eat there, insisting it had to be fried chicken. When they arrived, he saw the walls decorated with Bok Ju's numerous medals and certificates, which gave him a warm feeling inside. When it came time to pay, he insisted on giving the money for the previous delivery directly to Bok Ju's father, saying it was for the last order, even though Bok Ju's dad clearly remembered no such debt. Meanwhile, Bok Ju's two best friends noticed how often Jun Hyung was hanging around her and suspected she might finally be having some romantic luck. They even asked Bok Ju if Jun Hyung had awakened any feelings of love in her. Bok Ju replied that she had absolutely no interest in boys. But right after that, she ran into Jun Hyung again. He asked if she was praying to win a gold medal. Bok Ju replied sharply, "What's it to you?" Jun Hyung just smiled and reminded her to stay safe during training before leaving. One rainy day, Bok Ju had forgotten her umbrella. While rushing down the stairs, she still noticed a missing item poster on the wall. At first, she thought it was such a coincidence. The missing dresser in the photo looked exactly like the new one her father had just brought home. It slowly dawned on her that her father must have picked it up. Though she understood how hard her father worked to raise her and the importance of living frugally, the dresser was still someone else's property. Her father promised to return it, but since he wasn't in great health, Bok Ju couldn't help complaining a little about her dad's habit of picking things up off the street, even as she worried about his health. In the end, she volunteered to return the dresser herself. At that moment, a man appeared behind her, holding an umbrella over her head. He even shielded her from the splashing water caused by passing cars. And just like that, the girl who had confidently told her friends she'd never be moved by a boy found herself completely swept away by this stranger's quiet kindness. For the first time, her eyes were filled with thoughts of someone who had offered her warmth out of nowhere. She felt like she was falling in love. At that moment, Bok Ju realized she wasn't just a weightlifter, but also a girl longing for love. When she got home, she opened the umbrella the stranger had lent her and, standing in her room, recalled the experience of sharing the umbrella with him earlier that day. The thought of returning the dresser no longer felt like a burden. Instead, she was grateful for the experience, because it had led her to meet someone new who had sparked feelings in her heart. When Bok Ju walked once again past the intersection where she had met that kind stranger, she was drawn to a familiar figure jogging by. Wasn't that the same man who had shared his umbrella with her the day before? Curious, she quietly followed him all the way to a weight loss clinic, only to find out that he was actually a doctor there. Feeling a bit foolish, she turned back and left. Later, as she sat with her friends listening to them excitedly talk about all sorts of delicious food, all her favorites, she couldn't work up any appetite at all. Even after returning to school, her mind was still stuck at that weight loss clinic. She had originally planned to head toward her friends, but halfway there, she turned around and happily walked back to the clinic. At this point, she didn't care whether she needed to lose weight or not. The only thing on her mind was wanting to see that person again. When she arrived, the doctor immediately recognized her and asked if her arm was okay, remembering how heavy the dresser had been. Then, the consultation began. Right off the bat, Bokju blurted out, "Do you like rhythmic gymnastics?" catching the doctor completely off guard with the strange question. He had this quirky theory that guys are always drawn to girls who share the same hobbies. And since most boys love sports, it was worth asking. The two of them, Bokju and the doctor, ended up chatting briefly, but Bokju's little moment of joy quickly vanished when she saw the registration fee for the clinic. Her mind drifted to her dad, who had been using the same old, worn-out motorcycle for 20 years, constantly repairing it rather than buying a new one. Thinking of how hard her father worked, she couldn't bring herself to ask for the money. She even tried to borrow from her two friends, but both of them were strapped for cash too. Still, Bokju couldn't shake off the feeling. She was completely lovesick. Then, by chance, she overheard her friends talking about an upcoming school hiking competition where the first-place prize was a cash reward, and suddenly, hope flickered in her heart. All I have to do is win first place. With a clear goal in mind, she threw herself into the climb, determined to push past every imagined rival one by one. But halfway up the mountain, Junhyung spotted her. Just moments before, he had been planning to slack off and skip the climb, but seeing Bokju struggling uphill gave him a sudden burst of energy. He happily hopped up beside her, amazed that someone of her size could climb so fast. He kept encouraging her. For Junhyung, hiking was easy, but Bokju was already nervous about not winning first place, and now she had to deal with his endless chatter too. She gave it her all, using every last ounce of strength, only to reach the summit and find that a crowd had already arrived. First place, and her hopes of using the prize money for the clinic were gone. And there was Junhyung still at her side, chatting away, suggesting she go check in with the school nurse. Annoyed, Bokju snapped at him, feeling that they weren't close enough for him to meddle like this. Later, Bokju and her two friends went out for a meal. As they were enjoying themselves, he got a little too excited, dancing and singing, and accidentally spilled her drink on a man nearby. The man wasn't about to let them off the hook so easily just because they were young girls. His group kept making rude, suggestive remarks, pushing Bokju's patience to the limit until she couldn't hold back and decided to fight back. At that moment, Junhyung happened to walk into the same restaurant. He was about to step in and help, but remembering how Bokju had told him not to meddle before, he held back. He watched as Seonoke quickly pulled Bokju and Nanhee away, thinking the matter had been settled. But the men continued shouting crude comments after them, their words getting worse and worse. Junhyung couldn't take it anymore. Without a second thought, he charged over and got into a fistfight with them. Afterward, Bokju and her friends were still complaining about how they didn't even get to finish their meal, when Junhyung and his roommate rushed over, pulling them along as they all ran away from the scene. Junhyung and Bokju ended up ducking into a convenience store to hide. As they stood up to leave, Junhyung accidentally bumped his head. Their eyes met, and for a brief moment, the air between them felt a little different. Once outside, Bokju asked him, "Why did you run away just now? Was it because I got into a fight?" But Junhyung, being his stubborn self, denied it, refusing to admit the real reason. The truth was, Junhyung had only gotten into the fight because of Bokju. Because of that, Bokju, even though a little embarrassed, still found a chance to thank him. Meanwhile, Bokju's dad had just given her some pocket money. For a moment, she felt hope again. Maybe now she could finally afford to sign up for the weight loss program. But the thought of how hard her father had worked to earn that money tugged at her heart. She knew she couldn't use it for something so selfish, so once again, she buried her hopes. Just then, while practicing, she got a message from the doctor. A sincere reply telling her that actually he liked Slovak soccer more than Messi. That single message warmed her heart. Nothing could change her mind now. She was finally determined to sign up for the clinic. The thought of being able to see the doctor regularly filled her with excitement. But when it came time to officially register, she felt too embarrassed about her rough, calloused hands to reach out and shake his, hesitating for a long time. Since meeting the doctor, Bokju had started caring about her appearance. She bought herself a cute red hair clip and even picked out a handmade accessory, planning to give it to the doctor as a little thank you gift. While she was waiting, Junhyung suddenly showed up. She turned to him and, pretending it wasn't about herself, asked, "If a friend likes a guy she doesn't know too well, and she wants to give him a gift to say thank you, do you think that's okay?" Jun Hyung casually replied, "Of course it's okay." But then he added, "Just make sure it's not something handmade. That kind of gift puts too much pressure on the other person." In the end, he suggested something simple instead, writing a note. Even though Bakju had already walked away by then, she had clearly heard his advice. When she got home, she immediately sat down to write the note, but realized her handwriting was embarrassingly bad, all because she hadn't practiced properly as a kid. Still, as she scribbled, she found herself daydreaming about that cozy memory of the day they had shared an umbrella. The next day, Bakju gave the umbrella back to the doctor. The doctor even complimented her new hair clip, which sent her heart soaring with happiness. Seeing that Bakju had been coming to the clinic a few times without much visible progress, the doctor reassured her, telling her that healthy weight loss takes time, so there's no need to rush. Luckily, her phone rang just in time. Her dad was calling, which saved her from having to keep up the cello lie any longer. But after the call, a new problem popped up. Her dad told her he was bringing fried chicken to her dorm, and her weight loss clinic registration form was still lying around there. As soon as she hung up, she rushed out, worried her dad might arrive before she could hide the form. On the way, she bumped into Jun Hyung, and for once, she was genuinely relieved to see him. She begged him to hurry, faster and faster, panicking that her dad might show up any minute. At that moment, the scene happened to be spotted by a girl, Song Shir-ho, who was none other than Jun Hyung's ex-girlfriend. Meanwhile, Bakju, thanks to Jun Hyung's help, managed to rush back just in time and stop her dad from entering the dorm. But even back in the dorm, Shir-ho couldn't hold back her curiosity and asked Bakju why she seemed so close with Jun Hyung. That's when she learned the two had actually been elementary school classmates. The next day at lunch, just as Bakju sat down with her freshly plated meal, Jun Hyung swooped in and shamelessly snatched her food, claiming it smelled too good to resist. He even teased her, saying she looked like she'd lost some weight lately. The two of them ended up bickering and playfully chasing each other around the cafeteria, turning heads, and catching the attention of none other than Shir-ho, who happened to be there too. Marching over, Shir-ho grabbed Bakju's arm, pointedly reminded Jun Hyung that they were the ones who had a relationship. Although it was her first time joining this group for a meal, Shir-ho acted as if she'd always belonged, fussing over Jun Hyung and constantly piling food onto his tray. The over-the-top gesture completely killed Jun Hyung's appetite. Unable to take it any longer, he stood up to leave, but Shir-ho stopped him, asking, "It's just a meal. Do you really have to run away like this?" Jun Hyung simply replied, "I just don't want to make anyone uncomfortable." He didn't want to get tangled up in drama, so he tried to leave, but Shir-ho couldn't let it go and once again brought up the idea of getting back together. It turned out she had been the one to break up with Jun Hyung right before she had entered the competition for the national team. Coincidentally, the day Jun Hyung lost his spot at the trials had been the very same day Shir-ho dumped him. Back then, she had never once thought about how crushed he must have felt. Now, facing her heartfelt plea for reconciliation, Jun Hyung didn't hesitate for even a second. He firmly rejected her. The next day, Bakju rushed out the door in such a hurry that she forgot her umbrella, ending up soaked by the rain by the time she arrived at the clinic. Even drenched, though, she still carefully clipped on her little red hairpin before heading inside to meet the doctor. After checking her progress, the doctor praised her. She hadn't lost any muscle mass. Hearing his compliments, Bakju was over the moon. In fact, the moment the doctor stood beside her, the numbers on the chart didn't even matter anymore. Just being near him was enough to make her heart race. After another session at the weight loss center, Bakju returned to the dorm only to be cornered by her two best friends, who demanded to know what she'd been secretly busy with lately, disappearing all the time. Bakju knew if she told them the truth, it would be super awkward. After all, hadn't she just told them she wasn't interested in boys or dating? And this wasn't even a real relationship, it was just a hopeless crush. So she thought it'd be better to keep it to herself. Relieved the secret was still safe, Bakju returned to her room and immediately began listening to cello music. Since she'd lied to the doctor about being a cello major, she figured she should at least learn a thing or two. Later that evening, Shir-ho returned to the room and got straight to the point. She confessed she wanted to get back together with Jun Hyung, admitting she'd hurt him before and asking Bakju for help. But Bakju felt their relationship wasn't close enough for her to get involved, so she gently declined, saying she probably wouldn't be of much help. The next day, Bakju was enjoying another sweet visit to the clinic, feeling like her day couldn't get any better, until Jun Hyung suddenly appeared. When he called out, "Bakju," like a casual, old friend, she panicked. Before he could say anything, Bakju rushed to introduce him to the doctor, explaining that they were just old elementary school classmates who hadn't seen each other in years. But then, hearing the doctor mention Bakju's cello major, Jun Hyung was so shocked he nearly burst out laughing on the spot. Thankfully, Bakju caught his expression and subtly signaled him to stay quiet, and Jun Hyung played along, not exposing her lie. The doctor, completely unaware, even commented on how close the two of them seemed after reconnecting, while Jun Hyung just sat there, grinning mischievously. Now that he knew Bakju's little secret, he realized he held a fun bit of leverage over her. After leaving the weight loss clinic, sharp-witted Jun Hyung quickly figured out the truth. The reason Bakju had lied about being a cello major was because he had a crush on the doctor. At first, Bakju tried to deny it, but his weak denial only made it more obvious. In the end, he quietly admitted it was true. Jun Hyung thought to himself, as a member of the weightlifting team, if the others ever found out Bakju had been sneaking off to a weight loss clinic, it would definitely cause a huge scandal. Bakju couldn't stand the thought of Jun Hyung holding this secret over him. Finally, he dragged Jun Hyung into a corner, telling him to just say what he wanted and get it over with. Jun Hyung, amused, reassured him, "I'm not some mafia thug. I'm not going to hit you, and I'm definitely not going to blackmail you." Soon enough, the school sports festival arrived. Bakju, as always, lived up to expectations, scoring another win for the weightlifting team. But when it was time for Jun Hyung to participate in the bread and ribbon race, he slipped away from the field and went to an arcade instead. A senior from the swim team, who happened to like Jun Hyung's ex, Shurho, already had a strong dislike for Jun Hyung. When the senior realized Jun Hyung had vanished, he warned Taekwon, Jun Hyung's roommate, that if Jun Hyung didn't show up for the race, both of them would be in serious trouble. Taekwon was stuck, not knowing what to do, when he happened to bump into Bakju. After hearing Taekwon explain the situation, Bakju saw this as the perfect opportunity to finally free himself from Jun Hyung's constant teasing. Without hesitation, Taekwon recruited Bakju as the substitute for the race. Whether Jun Hyung agreed or not didn't matter. Once the race was over, they'd be even. For Bakju, the bread and ribbon race was ridiculously easy. The weightlifting team, on the other hand, was utterly confused. Why was Bakju suddenly running for the swim team? The swim team, however, was ecstatic, cheering Bakju's name at the top of their lungs. Bakju pushed through to the end and won the race. Just as the cheers erupted, Jun Hyung arrived, too late to stop it. After the race, Jun Hyung confronted Taekwon, scolding him for letting Bakju take his place. Now Bakju would be seen as betraying his own team. At that moment, Jun Hyung spotted Bakju and pulled him aside for a talk. He was upset that Bakju didn't trust his character and believed he would keep using that secret against him. It wasn't until Bakju, flustered, blurted out that he only did it all because of the doctor, that Jun Hyung finally understood Bakju must really like the doctor. Meanwhile, on the other side, Jun Hyung had been suffering from occasional dizziness and ringing in his ears. Even after visiting multiple hospitals, the doctors found no physical issues. In the end, his brother arranged for him to see a well-known psychologist. The consultation revealed that his symptoms likely stemmed from emotional trauma. The parents Jun Hyung had been calling mom and dad his whole life weren't his biological parents at all. They were actually his uncle and aunt. His brother was actually his cousin. As a child, his birth mother had left him to be raised by his uncle's family. One day, while searching for a bandage after cutting his hand, he accidentally found a stack of blank postcards at home, identical to the ones his mother had supposedly been sending him all along, covered in loving words. That was when he realized his birth mother had stopped writing to him a long time ago. The postcards he'd been receiving were all written by his aunt, just to comfort him. Those postcards had been written in his aunt's handwriting, carefully imitating his mother's style. In that moment, while feeling deeply grateful toward his aunt for all she had done, Jun Hyung's heart was also filled with bitter disappointment toward the mother who had abandoned him. Coming out of the counseling session, feeling downcast, Jun Hyung happened to spot Bakju getting out of his brother's car, and suddenly, it felt like he had something else to focus on. Bok Ju, wanting to change out of his carefully chosen outfit, rushed to the subway station. Jun Hyung, knowing her well, guessed she'd come back out through the same subway exit, and sure enough, there she was. The moment Bok Ju saw him standing there, she couldn't help but grumble. Why was he always popping up in front of her, no matter where she went? Just then, a car drove past, splashing water toward them. Bok Ju thought Jun Hyung would step forward and shield her. But to her surprise, Jun Hyung actually pushed her out in front of the water, using her as his human shield. No wonder Bok Ju kept finding herself falling for her charming doctor instead. Even though, after the fact, Jun Hyung kindly helped wipe the water off her face, Bok Ju still rolled her eyes and scolded him with her usual fighting spirit. Later, at home, Bok Ju's father and uncle carefully sized up the young man she had brought home for the first time. They were curious about who this boy was, showing up as one of the rare males in Bok Ju's life. Bok Ju introduced him as her elementary school classmate, and now her university schoolmate too. Her father, both skeptical and polite, invited Jun Hyung to stay for abalone. When the dish was finally served, her father couldn't quite believe their relationship was just classmates. Jun Hyung, feeling awkward under her father's sharp gaze, politely declined several times. But once Bok Ju's father left the room, Jun Hyung finally relaxed, took a bite, and found the abalone so delicious he couldn't help but go for another. But the moment he looked up, he realized Bok Ju's father was still watching him, eyes narrowed. Bok Ju quickly reached out to block his view, trying to shield Jun Hyung from the intense fatherly scrutiny. The sight was so cute that even her uncle couldn't help but tease. After the meal, Bok Ju brought Jun Hyung out to enjoy the night view. Good food and good mood were, after all, the best medicine for the heart. Little did she know, her real trouble was about to start. Bok Ju's rival, who had always seen her as a competitor, sneaked into her room while she wasn't there and went through her bag. That's when she found Bok Ju's registration form for the weight loss clinic. The very next morning, she turned the document over to the weightlifting department. Coincidentally, Jun Hyung, who had gone to the gym early for training, caught sight of this, but at the time, he thought nothing of it. Shortly after, Bok Ju was suddenly called back home. The head of the weightlifting department even showed up at her house. Her father, who had always supported her dream without reservation, was absolutely furious. He never imagined that during such a crucial period of gaining weight for competition, his daughter would secretly go to a weight loss clinic. Yelling wasn't enough to express his anger. Bok Ju was then temporarily taken back to the weightlifting dorms by her coach. No matter how patiently they asked or how harshly they scolded, Bok Ju refused to explain why she had gone to the clinic. Meanwhile, Jun Hyung was puzzled by her sudden disappearance. She had texted him earlier, reminding him it was her brother's birthday, saying she was planning something special. But now she had gone completely silent. It wasn't until he bumped into Bok Ju's uncle that he learned the truth, and she was now being strictly watched at home. When he realized she wasn't answering calls or texts, Jun Hyung went to the weightlifting dorm and waited at the gate. Bok Ju passed by him, accompanied by her coach, but didn't say a word. Her father was still furious. His health wasn't great, but out of stubborn pride and anger, he refused to go to the hospital for his regular treatment. When Bok Ju came home, the sight of her only made him more upset. But that's just the way fathers are, saying the harshest words, yet loving you the most. In his fury, Bok Ju's father even threatened to go to the weight loss clinic to confront the doctor, believing the doctor had tricked his daughter into dieting just for profit. No matter how hard Bok Ju tried to stop him, nothing worked. Even when she promised never to go back, her father wouldn't listen. Before he could take another step, he suddenly collapsed. That night, Bok Ju stood at a distance, softly talking to the doctor, as if speaking to him through the air. She told him, "I'm a weightlifter. I like sausages. I like you." But Bok Ju never had the courage to confess her true feelings to the doctor face to face. Just to make a good impression, she had no choice but to keep piling on the lies. She regretted missing the doctor's birthday, but when she saw her father, frail from illness, and her coach, who had guided her so patiently, she couldn't bring herself to visit the doctor again. After delivering her belated birthday gift tonight, she'd stop everything and focus only on weightlifting from now on. Just then Jun Hyung called. He asked how she'd been, clearly concerned, but before they could talk for long, his teammates called him away. Meanwhile, Bakju's coach was also searching for her, asking why she hadn't shown up for training again. Was her heart still not in the right place? No matter how much the coach asked, Bakju stayed silent. In frustration, the coach decided the only way to wake her up was with a harsh lesson, even resorting to hitting her. Lan Shi, who knew the whole story, couldn't bear to watch Bakju getting scolded and hit so hard. She stepped forward and told the coach the truth. Bakju had gone to the weight loss clinic all because she had a crush on the doctor. If the coach had kept scolding her, maybe Bakju could have held back the tears, but once the coach switched to comforting her, all her sadness and bottled-up grievances came pouring out, and she broke down crying in the coach's arms. At the same time, Jun Hyung, who had been worried ever since Bakju hung up the phone without a word, was frantically searching for her. When he finally found her, she was sobbing helplessly in her coach's embrace. Later, as they walked, he stopped because he overheard Bakju asking him to leave. Her reason was that she was afraid others would misunderstand and think he was her boyfriend. Jun Hyung, not one to back down, confessed to Bakju. He told her that he saw her as a special friend, not just an ordinary friend. But the silly Bakju still didn't understand what Jun Hyung meant. She stared at him blankly, looking puzzled. Jun Hyung had to make his feelings clear through actions instead of words. After his confession, Jun Hyung noticed that Bakju seemed awkward in their conversations and interactions. Bakju insisted that she was acting perfectly normal, but she still wouldn't let him walk her home. After she left, Jun Hyung found her bag on the ground. Opening it, he confirmed it was hers and happily decided to keep it for her. Maybe this would allow him to explore more and learn something new. Inside, he found her schedule. The first item was going to the library to study. He could already guess that Bakju would only study for less than 5 minutes before falling asleep. The second item was learning the piano. He had heard Bakju mention it before. The third item was going to the cruise, where she didn't have to wait in line to sing. While Lan Shi and Shan Yu were having a heated discussion about what the shadow could be, Bakju's mind was filled with thoughts of Jun Hyung holding her. Her face instantly turned red. Even as the two of them continued to talk endlessly, all she could hear in her mind was Jun Hyung's words, "I like you." After taking the initiative to kiss Bakju, he suggested that she consider him as her boyfriend for a month. The next morning, Bakju complained that her temporary boyfriend hadn't called or sent a message. But Jun Hyung not contacting her didn't mean she wasn't on his mind. He had even carefully selected a bouquet of roses to give her. When he found out Bakju had gone to Shan Yu's house, he went to the bus station to wait for her. However, their meeting didn't go as expected. She explained that her father was undergoing a medical procedure, and she didn't know what to do if anything happened to him. Bakju and her uncle had thought her father's condition was severe and had been crying, begging him not to leave them. But when the doctor reassured them that it wasn't critical and that her father only needed further observation, they were relieved. Bakju planned to buy some toiletries for her father, only to find that Jun Hyung had already bought everything she intended to get and placed it at the door. The next day, she showed up in front of her coach and asked if she could return to weightlifting and resume training. She was eager to tell Jun Hyung her decision to go back to weightlifting. She also thanked him for everything he had done, including accompanying her to the hospital the previous day. At the same time, Bakju confessed her feelings to Jun Hyung. She told him that she was satisfied with their trial relationship because, she said, "I like you too." Finally, after both of them expressed their feelings, they became a couple, happy and sweet. However, Bakju had once sworn in front of her best friends that she wasn't interested in boys. So, when she suddenly had a boyfriend, her friends would feel betrayed. Bakju strongly insisted that Jun Hyung not disclose their relationship to anyone. He also became very jealous when Bakju continued wearing the red hairband that she had worn when meeting her older brother. He refused to let her keep wearing it. In an effort to stop her from wearing the red hairband, he quickly took her to buy a new one and also tried to compensate her for the hair she lost in the process. Bakju realized how deeply Jun Hyung cared about her and stated that she would never act that childish. However, the surprise also came with a bit of shock. Bakju was leaving for Thailand without her father or uncle accompanying her, and without Jun Hyung seeing her off. She didn't want to leave crying because that wasn't her style. It's said that long-distance relationships test the feelings of both people. Ever since Bokju was selected to go to Thailand, the two have been in a long period of waiting and missing each other. The next day, when she called Jun Hyung, he quickly hung up, saying he was in training. She couldn't help but feel suspicious. Her suspicions, combined with other people's guesses, led Bokju to call her friends, asking them to check if anything was unusual with Jun Hyung recently. The three of them decided that before they gathered enough evidence, following him seemed like the best option. After the agreed time passed, Jun Hyung still hadn't called. Just then, his backup arrived and mentioned that earlier at the coffee shop by the school gate, Jun Hyung had been seen at a matchmaking event. This instantly lost all the fun of their workout. Originally, Jun Hyung had planned to go to a second meeting, but he was pulled aside by Taekwon, who said it was an urgent matter. When he got to the cafe and realized it was a matchmaking event, he wanted to refuse, but he couldn't say no to Taekwon's future happiness. He reluctantly sat down. Soon, Bokju arrived with her two best friends. They were still gossiping, wondering which of those well-dressed girls would possibly be interested in Jun Hyung. Bokju, holding her breath, quickly texted Jun Hyung, urging him to resolve the situation fast. Jun Hyung then realized something was seriously wrong. When did his girlfriend start glaring at him so fiercely? She kept finding reasons to rush Taekwon to leave, but Taekwon wouldn't budge. Unexpectedly, one of the girls across from him started complimenting Jun Hyung, saying his shoulders were very muscular. Bokju immediately appeared and demanded that the woman let go of his hand. She then revealed that she was Jun Hyung's girlfriend. Finally, the secret Bokju had been desperately trying to protect, especially from her two friends, was out in the open. The three of them started interrogating the couple, asking when they had started dating. They decided that Jun Hyung would treat them to barbecue, and only then would they forgive Bokju. Jun Hyung was overjoyed. If he had known that the punishment would be so simple, he would have made their relationship public sooner. But little did he know, Bokju was fiercely against this idea. The reason was the way her three friends ate. This was their necessary method of filling their stomachs when they went to barbecue places. Seeing how happy the two of them looked while eating, Taekwon continued ordering more food. Only Bokju and Jun Hyung, however, were forcing themselves not to eat. Jun Hyung was dying of hunger. Just as Bokju felt sorry for him, realizing they'd just spent half a month's living expenses, her friends were still pushing him to spend. Now Jun Hyung understood why Bokju had been so against their barbecue dinner plan. After returning to the dorm, her best friends immediately started grilling her about the details of her relationship. Jun Hyung felt like there was no need for a secret romance anymore. He said, "Now that I can hold your hand anytime I want, it feels so great." But Bokju was worried that people would gossip about how she wasn't good enough for Jun Hyung. Jun Hyung reassured her that she didn't need to worry. He would always be more proactive in loving her. Later that day, they went to cheer for Siho, who had an important competition. Siho made a mistake in the first round, but surprisingly, she didn't lose any points and ended up getting a high score. It turned out the event organizer had spoken to the judges beforehand. During the second round, Siho chose not to go for the bag. Faced with the crowd's confusion, he felt completely at ease. Although his actions seemed foolish at the time, Bokju thought it was quite cool. She wondered if they would feel the same when facing a critical competition. Would they be too nervous to act? Jun Hyung encouraged her to face it bravely. However, just as Jun Hyung was offering her support, he was faced with a challenge of his own. His biological mother suddenly returned from abroad. Jun Hyung, who hadn't seen his mother in years, was so happy he couldn't speak. He spent the whole day answering his mother's questions about his life. But by accident, he overheard his adoptive family discussing how they were helping his birth mother gather money for her child's surgery abroad. It turned out his birth mother didn't come back just to see him, but to raise the money for the expensive surgery. In an instant, all his anticipation completely collapsed. He didn't want to hear his family defending his birth mother, and only wanted to ask her how she had the nerve to come back and ask for help. The gifts and postcards he had received were actually sent by his aunt, weren't they? He thought it would be better if they just told him everything, rather than letting him keep pretending not to know. Meanwhile, Bokju had just been notified that she was selected for the national team, and a reporter had reached out for an interview. But right at the beginning of the interview, she apologized and ran to the seaside, because to her, something more important than the interview was finding Junhyung, whose heart had been shattered by his birth mother. Bakju even threatened to break up if she couldn't find him. Junhyung had indeed been at the seaside just moments before, feeling frustrated about why he couldn't earn his birth mother's love, and why he cared so much about the shoes she gave him, even though they were so small they cut his feet. But if it wasn't for the surgery money, she would never have come back to see him at all. It was a mix of disappointment and despair. Bakju searched everywhere she could think of where Junhyung might go, but found nothing. When she reached the swimming pool entrance, she didn't want to miss even the slightest chance, so she went inside, and sure enough, Junhyung was there. But no matter how she called him, he didn't respond. Bakju called out his name, expressing her worries. Junhyung finally admitted his mother didn't return for him, and now he felt too ashamed to face his aunt. Bakju, worried about him wandering around, walked him to the pharmacy and told him to sincerely ask his aunt for forgiveness and make amends with the snacks he had just bought. Back at the pharmacy, Junhyung wrapped up the snacks. His adoptive mother held his hand, and he couldn't hold back anymore. He hugged her tightly and tearfully apologized, telling her how much he loved his family. His birth mother had finally shown up after so many years, yet not to see him, but to raise money for the surgery of the younger child she had with another man. Unable to accept it, he had said too many hurtful things to his adoptive mother. But just like Bakju had said, between parents and children, there is no such thing as real disappointment. At Bakju's urging, Junhyung went to see his birth mother off. He returned the only keepsake from her that he had always kept, and even showed her a picture of Bakju, introducing her as his girlfriend. When Bakju left for the training, she neither let her dad and uncle send her off. She didn't want to leave crying and sobbing, because that just wasn't her style. The next day, as soon as she called Junhyung, he hung up using training as an excuse, which made her feel a bit suspicious. When her teammates saw Junhyung's photo, she couldn't help but comment on how good-looking he was. Bakju's growing doubts, combined with her teammates' teasing, left her uneasy. In the end, she couldn't help but call her best friend, asking her to keep an eye on Junhyung and see if there was anything unusual about him lately. Unexpectedly, after tailing him all the way, they ended up at a hospital. Although countless guesses flashed through their minds, nothing could compare to seeing the truth with their own eyes. When they opened the door, they were stunned to find out that the person Junhyung had been secretly visiting was actually Bakju's father. It turned out that a few days ago, Junhyung had wanted to stop by the fried chicken shop to check on Bakju's father, who hadn't been feeling well. But when he arrived, the shop was closed and business was suspended. After contacting Bakju's uncle, he learned that her father had been hospitalized. The surgery date had been moved to coincide with Bakju's international competition, so as not to affect her performance. Junhyung, not wanting Bakju to worry, had visited the hospital behind her back and had agreed to help her father keep it a secret. Bakju's father suspected that Junhyung and Bakju's relationship wasn't as simple as just being friends. Otherwise, why would he care so much? Luckily, Bakju's uncle already approved of Junhyung as a potential son-in-law and helped smooth things over. Just as they were speaking, Bakju happened to call. Since Junhyung had just promised her father to keep the surgery a secret, he hurriedly told her he was in the middle of training and quickly ended the call. But when he tried calling her back later, she didn't pick up. Already suspicious that Junhyung was acting weird, Bakju noticed him sneaking off to answer a phone call behind her back, which only made her more curious about who was on the other end. But suddenly Bakju calmed down and returned to her seat, pretending to let the matter go. While Junhyung wasn't paying attention, she stealthily grabbed his phone to check it. Feeling hurt and convinced that Junhyung had fallen for someone else, Bakju left him behind and went home alone. Unexpectedly, once she got home, she stumbled upon a strange scene. Seeing her dad wearing a mask, she asked why, and he replied it was because he had a cold and didn't want to spread it to the customers. Luckily, her dad and uncle had managed to make it home just before Bakju arrived, keeping their secret safe. Meanwhile, Junhyung, even though he had successfully completed the task of stalling her, was still misunderstood by Bakju, who thought he had fallen for someone else, never knowing he had only been hiding the truth for her sake. The next morning, Bakju's father and uncle hurried her to return to hospital for training. Once she left, the two of them rushed back to the hospital. But unexpectedly, Bakju, who had forgotten something, turned back, only to find the shop empty, which made her wonder why both her dad and uncle were gone. At that moment, a regular customer happened to walk by and casually asked about her dad's surgery, which finally revealed the truth. Bakju immediately called her uncle and rushed to the hospital, and only then did she finally understand the reason behind all of Junhyung's strange behavior lately. Feeling guilty, Bakju found Junhyung to apologize for misunderstanding him, after confirming that she'd already had a heartfelt talk with her father. As they stood at the station, knowing they were about to part ways, Junhyung once again reminded Bakju that he would stay by her father's side during the surgery, and as for himself, he would head to Taerong, carrying his longing for her, and promised never to let his heart wander. He told Bakju to focus entirely on her training with no distractions. The two said goodbye over and over, but neither of them could actually bring themselves to walk away. Their hands couldn't bear to let go, and both wished the hug could last forever. Fortunately, everything went well. The surgery was a success. Now, all their hopes were pinned on Bakju's competition. She lived up to everyone's expectations and managed to endure until the final score lit up, making her family and friends erupt with joy. She had finally achieved the result her family and countless others had long dreamed of. Junhyung stared at her on the screen, bursting with pride and excitement, and her dad smiled with satisfaction. As soon as Bakju flew back to Korea, she anxiously looked around the airport, searching for the one person who had been on her mind all this time. The moment she spotted Junhyung, she couldn't hold back anymore. Ignoring reporters and cameras, she dashed into his arms. Not long after, Junhyung also earned excellent grades and was selected for the national training team. At Bakju's graduation ceremony, both of their families stood together, politely chatting like old friends, creating a warm and harmonious scene. Bakju's two best friends and Taegwon also joined the fun, taking group photos to capture the memories. A grand graduation day wouldn't be complete without its quirky traditions, including the seniors walking the runway while juniors chased them down, snatching little keepsakes. Even Junhyung and the swim team couldn't escape. Their juniors ended up tossing them all into the swimming pool. Later, Bakju and Junhyung wandered around campus, reminiscing about the past 4 years. And beyond friendship, she hadn't expected to find love too, and with someone tall, handsome, and kind like Junhyung. As they walked, Junhyung teased her. If he wins the next big competition, they should get married. Bakju, playful as always, said she'd think about it, then suggested they go for one last run together. Seeing Bakju's competitive spark flare up, Junhyung had no choice but to join her in the run. From classmates to friends, and finally lovers, came to a sweet and satisfying end. Thanks for watching this drama with me. See you in the next one.